Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Women's Fitness Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Elin, a female empowerment coach as well as a educator and obviously podcast host for the Women's Fitness Academy. I specialize in binge eating, confidence and body image. And today I am here with someone that if you are coming to our retreat at the end of July, you are actually going to meet. So that's super exciting. Her name is Becca. We met through a mutual friend here in Bali. And then I found out that she's not only a health coach, but she also does breathwork. She does so many amazing things. But one of the reasons why I wanted to put her on the podcast was because I had an incredible breathwork session with her. And it just opened up my world so much. And I realized so much about myself that I had been suppressing. So I messaged her again and I was like, can you please do another one? And then I messaged Women's Fitness Academy and said, we need to have this girl on our retreat. Like, this is amazing. So Becca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
I'm
super
excited. And like you said, we met through a mutual friend at the start, and then you asked me would I do breathwork with you. So I guess that's what we'll be talking about today. And I want to help people learn a little bit about breathwork, what it is, the power of your breath, and most of all, how to not be afraid of it.
Yes. So that's one of the main things I think people think about breathwork is that it is scary. And that's one of the reasons why I held off for so long, because I was like, oh my God, it's scary. Oh my God, like I'm going to feel pain. I'm going to I cannot be able to control myself. Yeah. And like we said before we started talking, like we've all seen those videos on Instagram where people like literally look like they're having a seizure, they're crying, they're screaming, they look like they're like possessed by this thing. So yeah, like you said, you do a lot of different things. So you're a health coach?
Yeah, personal trainer. I do CBT, so cognitive behavior therapy, helping people understand their thinking patterns or their intrusive thought patterns, negative thinking, and how to understand that and challenge their mindset and change it, and how that can feed into creating better emotional management, and similar to you, helping people understand why they have poor body image or binge eating type of behaviors. I would do that sort of work using a CBT based approach, mostly online, but the breathwork is relatively new to my coaching. So I do breathwork one-to-one and group breathwork events, and then I do some breathwork with ice bath events as well. So this has all come from probably the last maybe 2 years. Being out in Bali, there is a lot of healing methodologies, or like I'd say alternative therapies, but I have quite a skeptical and rational brain. So when people were talking to me about breathwork, I was actually struggling a bit with COVID at the time, and people were talking about breathwork, and I was kind of thinking, okay, I'm not sure if this is, how can breathing like help us? So I started getting into breathwork, and I had long COVID at the time, and it was helping my actual breathing as well as helping my nervous system. And I started only doing it for myself, and then realized how impactful it was on me. And then that's when I trained up, and now that's why I'm starting to do breathwork with people one-to-one or in groups. And that was just because I started doing it for myself. And so that is one part of the coaching. And I guess what we're going to go tunnel vision on for this episode is all about the breath, different types of breath. Maybe a little bit about, what you got from yours. And that's, I think, find that's the most helpful way for people to understand that it is actually so impactful and profound is when people explain their experiences like mine, and they're saying, okay, I was skeptical about this, I wasn't really sure of it, or I was afraid of it, and actually I just did it. And when you're explained, which I will do, when you're explained, what it is and what you're going to experience, then you're much more comfortable with trying it rather than going into it from a place of fear, which will actually just make it worse. So out here in particular in Bali, there's a lot of spoofers, there's a lot of chancers, there's a lot of people that aren't qualified to do what they're doing. And breathwork isn't just about breathing. It can actually be really unsafe if you're not with the right facilitator, if they don't actually know what they are doing when they are guiding people with the breath, because it's not just about breathing. You're changing your physiology, you're accessing parts of your subconscious mind, so you really need to know what you're doing with people based on what sort of breath they're doing, because we can use different types of breaths or breathing for different outcomes based on what the intention is for whatever style of breathing that you're doing.
Oh god! Even now, I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. I forget that I'm meant to interview here. I'm like, please keep talking. Even before, like, Becca is honestly a wealth of knowledge. Like, even before when we were talking about like fight or flight mode and being fatigued and stuff, it's like, fuck, I should have like put the recording on now. It's such a good conversation. Anyway, back to the breathwork. Yeah. So I feel like you explained the breathwork like a little bit, but for someone who's like breathwork, like what the fuck is that? Because before I moved to Bali, when I heard about it, I was like, what do you mean breathwork? Like, just like breathing? Because people would say, oh, I did breathwork in the sauna, like by myself. And now I obviously know that that's probably not what they were doing. They were just focusing on the breathing. So yeah, like for a complete beginner, what is it?
Well, there's lots of different reasons that we would use breathwork or breathing for. Breath work is really just using various different types of breathing styles to create whatever sort of outcome you're looking for. So for example, I would do functional breathing for people that want to perform better in training. They want to manage their oxygen and carbon dioxide levels better. They want to be able to keep their heart rate regulated while they're training, let's say for endurance or performance. That's one way that you would use the breath to get that sort of an outcome. That's not the sort of breath work that I did with you or that we do when we're doing, let's say, there's so many different terms for it. It can be called transformational breath work, it can be called breakthrough breath work, emotional release breath work. That style of breath work, which is what I know you want me to focus on today, is very different. The breathing patterns are different and the desired result is different. So there's that functional breathing where you're focusing on actually working the diaphragm for the sake of having better concentration, better attention, better memory, better focus, better sleep. Functional breathing for training and performance. Then you can have breathing that just like slows down the nervous system. Maybe you're doing it for 5 minutes in the morning just to relax. You can have breathing if you kind of are lethargic in the morning, a little bit fatigued. Then you can use a breathing style that will help wake you up. So which would help activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. And sometimes we can access that and activate it on purpose if we want to wake up and create energy in our body. So there's so many different ways that we can use different styles of breathing based on whatever we want to get out of it. The style of breathwork that I've done with you and that we'll be doing on the retreat is, like I said, can be called transformational breathwork. That style of breathwork is mostly a conscious, controlled hyperventilation. So we are purposely putting our bodies and breathing in a state of hyperventilation for many different outcomes. One, which is to, first of all, trigger the fight or flight mode on purpose. So with that style of breathing, your sympathetic nervous system or fight or flight mode is going because you're breathing fast. You're breathing from the belly. You're doing 2 inhales and 1 exhale, which is like hyperventilation. You're changing the carbon dioxide levels in your blood, which is really important. If people don't know what they're doing with this style of breathing, which is why it needs to be facilitated, it has an impact on your physiology because you're changing your blood chemistry. So with your breath, it's not just that you're breathing fast, you're actually changing the pH of your blood. And with that comes all of these side effects that people are sometimes afraid of. One of them is those pins and needles, those lobster hands, the claws, and that's because with that style of breathing, you are constricting or narrowing the blood vessels, literally by using your breath. So the blood flow is reduced all over your body. And because the peripheries or the extremities are the last place, those are what will tighten up the most, which is why you don't get tightness in the belly or the chest, because the blood flow is restricting all over your body, and so your arteries and vessels are larger from your main organs, and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So the vessels in your fingers and your toes or your feet will be much smaller than, let's say, the ones coming out of your heart. So that's why when the blood flow is reduced, as it goes slower and slower and slower and narrower, the vessels are narrower, this is where you're going to feel it the most, in your hands and feet. And because that's where the last place the blood flow is going to go, and it's also this, let's say, the skinniest vessels. You'll also, but then the other benefit of restricting blood flow all over your body is restricting the blood flow to the prefrontal cortex. So those, the inner critic, the overthinking, your monkey mind, you know, that is, the blood flow is going to be restricted to that part of your brain, which is hugely beneficial because that helps shut that voice up for the duration of the breathwork session, or at least towards the end, especially if you're new to it. It can be hard to be getting, you know, into the breath. So when we're doing it's conscious, it's controlled, and you said you feel that people are afraid of it because they're fear of losing control. But with breathwork, we're always in control of our breath. So you are conscious and it is controlled, and you've got the option, if you're finding it a bit too intense, whether that's emotionally, if your body's getting cold, if you're getting too warm and you're sweating, if you find anything is a little bit too much, you can slow down your breath. You can decide, okay, I'm going to slow down my breath. I'm going to breathe through my nose. Sorry, I forgot to mention that you're breathing through your mouth with this type of breath work, whereas all the other breathing styles I talked about, you'd be breathing through your nose. So you're purposely breathing through the mouth, you're purposely doing hyperventilation to reduce the blood flow all over your body, to initially activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, but that's just because of how we're breathing. Your body is like, I'm hyperventilating, that's usually like panic attack, so why? But you need to get into that state in order to access, you first get into that state, and then after that we get into a parasympathetic state, which is a complete break for your nervous system, which is rest, repair, relax. So we're doing a little bit of both, but mostly we're going to be in a relaxed state after we do the hyperventilation. So you're activating your theta waves, those brain waves that put you in that deep meditative state. So there's loads of benefits to doing this style of breathwork, as long as you are doing it facilitated, and as long as you are informed of the side effects, because not everybody can do this style of breathwork, especially if you've got asthma, any heart conditions, or any psychiatric conditions, severe anxiety, PTSD. Those would all be conditions that would probably make it very unsafe for you to do breathwork. So you need to be informed on the contraindications, but you also need to be informed of what you might experience. Not that you will experience it every time, but you might experience it. So sometimes the biggest, I guess, turn off for this style of breathwork is when they see those videos of people going crazy, like huge emotional reactions, which can happen. And the reason that happens is because you've turned down, if not off, this part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is always thinking, but you're activating a little bit more of your subconscious and your emotional mind. So it just means that, you know, there's probably parts of you that you've been shutting off or suppressing that we are allowing to come out in the breathwork session. And sometimes that can come out in various different forms. It can come out in laughing, it can come out in crying, it can come out in movement. You might want to move your arms, like energy created in the body, because that's another thing with the breath work, like its very core form. All we are doing is transforming energy in the body. So we are taking in energy, like breathing itself even requires energy. It's part of metabolism. So we're breathing in energy into our body to transform energy in our body, negative, stale energy. So breathing in itself is like a high frequency form of energy. Negative feelings, negative thoughts, stress, they're all low vibrations down here. So as we breathe, we're bringing fresh, positive energy, high frequency down into our body, and we're literally just transforming any shit in our body, picking it up and bringing a low vibration up to a high vibration. And that's why you feel very light and like literally like a weight has been taken off your shoulders by the end of the session, because with your breath, you've been kind of transforming heavy energy and bringing it up to a lighter, higher vibration energy. So it's all energy taken into the body, transformed in the body, and then the negative energy released. So you can have those emotional reactions, you can have physical reactions like energy generated in your body where you can feel quite heavy after if you haven't fully, let's say, cleared. You can feel like a bit hyper after if you've created energy in your body and that's what you needed and you've been really, really tired. Your body will either give you a rest or it will give you energy. Oh, wow. So you might be like high after a session because breathwork will give your body whatever your body needs. Sometimes I go in and I might almost fall asleep in the middle and I just like completely zen. Sometimes I go in and I come out and I'm like hyper. It's like whatever my body needs in that moment, and that whatever another person needs in that moment, that's what breathwork will give you. So there's so many various benefits, and one of the huge ones is that complete break for your nervous system and that complete break from being inside your head. So that hopefully all of those things will help people not be so fearful of it when you understand that you're actually just taking in energy, transforming energy, releasing shit energy, giving your body and mind a break. That is what breathwork is really. And you can also bring in, a little bit of an intention. Every time you go into a session, it's good to have a little bit of a focus. Okay, have I been feeling really angry? Have I been confused, upset? You can have the intention that you want to let something go in the session. You can have the intention that you've got no expectations. You just want to get curious with your body and your breath, because a lot of the times, I'm sure that you know this with your clients, that we are disconnected from our bodies and we're on the phone or we're very attached to our appearance and training all the time, but we're not actually connecting with our bodies. And the breath work gives us a chance to completely time out and focus on the breath. You have to be very mindful doing it so that you can get the pattern right, otherwise you won't get the full effects of the breath work. And it's a chance to listen to your body and see what your body is telling you. Is your body bringing up something that you didn't even know was there? As in, do you feel a little bit emotional as you're going through the breath work? Are you feeling like you want to laugh? That's your body telling you need a bit more fun in your life, you need a lighter energy. Are you feeling like super, super relaxed? That's your body telling you that you probably need to take a little bit more rest. So it's about connecting with your breath and connecting with your body and just listening to your body for that like 1 hour or whatever, and seeing at the end of it what comes up. And then you can kind of, takes a little bit of time to process it afterwards, which is why it's really important that you have a facilitator that knows how to interpret some of what you might have experienced, and that you're again told how to listen to your body. If you're feeling a little bit low or a little bit high, just kind of listen to yourself emotionally and you give yourself a rest. If you train loads like you do or I do, it can be very easy to be like, okay, I did a breathwork session, okay, back to training. And then you're not actually fully integrating what you've learned because you've just chosen to only do it for the hour and not integrate it after. And as you do more of it, you'll get better at listening to your body, you'll get better at the breath, the breathing pattern, because it is quite hard to get into it, and you'll get better at understanding your body and your mind a little bit more.
Yeah, God, I think that I'm gonna listen back to this and be like taking notes. So if you feel like, please pause this episode and just like go back and listen again. There's so much information here, and like you just know it so well, and it's just so inspiring to listen to. I just wanted to share, like, obviously, like, I was so scared before I did my first session with you, and I just had, like, I'd watched all those videos and I'd heard all about like what you could expect and stuff, but I had no idea that what like, because I kind of went into it and I didn't, because I remember you asked me, like, do you have an intention? And I didn't really have an intention. And for me, like, what I experienced that first time, like, I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but like, I literally felt like I could connect with someone who'd passed away. And I got really, really emotional, and after it, and that's right, I also had so much pain in my sacred chakra, so like the lower stomach, and it was like trapped feminine energy or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, we went through that after.
And I, like, when we talked about it after, I was like, it was so weird, like I had the worst pain in my, like, it was like I had my, like, I was, did I just get my period or something? Like, what's going on? But I remember, like, when we looked that up after, I was like, oh my god, this makes so much sense, because I had been working on, like, I was like, I feel like I'm so in my masculine, I feel like I'm overworked, I'm not letting myself be emotional, I'm not, like, I'm kind of just ignoring all the signs. So that first breathwork session that we had, it really was like the starting point for me to just like, okay, Elin, you're actually on the verge of burning out. You need to slow the fuck down, and then just start trusting your body again, and having some downtime, and incorporating more like that feminine flow.
It can be so unbalanced when we're coaches and when you work for yourself. Like, I find that a lot as well. The balance can be really, really off. And sometimes I think the really good thing about breathwork is that the one of the best things to do when you're first getting into breathwork is just to see what the hell it's all about. It mightn't be for you, but it's really important, because when, like, part of breathwork is about accessing your subconscious. So we're here, like, the thinking mind is the conscious mind. So, you know, we're aware, we're alert, like, most of our day is spent with the conscious mind. But when we go to sleep, that subconscious is a little bit more active, which is why we get, like, weird dreams, and we're like, what the fuck was that about? It could have been, I had one last night, and I'm like, why was she and he in that dream? Like, I would never think about, like, these people or these scenarios. I was like, wow, okay, that was really weird. And that's why it's important, because when you do something like meditation, that's about calming the mind and stillness, but you're still in your conscious brain. With breathwork, because you're actually changing your physiology with the way that you're breathing, it does activate that subconscious more, which is why stuff can come up from years ago, which is why if you've got PTSD or anything like that, it can be, you know, it's not safe to do it, because it can be, let's say, re-traumatizing or very triggering. So you have to be really aware of the contraindications. But
we'll put all of these in the show notes as well, so that you guys know exactly.
But accessing some of that subconscious allows you to be like, oh, okay, that's okay, I haven't thought about that for ages, that must be still bothering me. Or like you, even from a physical perspective, you know, it was really good that you had said, I'm feeling like, you know, you have to go through, okay, what was your experience? Sometimes, for me, most of the time, my experience is almost always physical. I can always feel vibrations in my body. I almost leave my body, which is great, because I'm always on. So if I can get like an hour or half an hour literally leaving my body, like, sometimes it's like I'm like looking down on me doing the breath work. It's so weird. And I'm like, it's so, I can't describe it. But sometimes I'll get that, and sometimes, but there'll be nothing going on up here. There'll be no, it'll, like,
she's tapped her head.
And I wouldn't be like I wouldn't be an anxious thinker, I wouldn't be an overthinker. I used to be extremely negative, but not now. So even just to be able to have no thoughts at all, because most of my thoughts would be about work, you know, you're always doing the next thing, especially if you're on Instagram creating content, so you have it on. So that's what happens to me most of the time in breathwork. But for you had a very visual experience during the guided meditation at the end, but then you also described how you were feeling something, which was really important, because then I went through some of the chakras, and it can help you understand your body a little bit more. If you didn't say anything about your body or where you were feeling something, or if who you were working with wasn't clued up on that, that would have been missed. And the work that you're doing on yourself now, or let's say since that, is all following the signals that your body was telling you, and then you can get to know yourself a little bit more and work on that intuition. Like, I'm not a very, very spiritual person, but you know, a lot of your personality and a lot of your happiness in life is going to be about being your authentic self, which a lot of people are fearful of. And I think sometimes people do breath work and they have these huge realizations afterwards. They're like, fuck, what have I been doing the last 10 years? Because I haven't been acting as I think I truly should be or am. And then they have to do a little bit of, like, you know, deep work and change their lives or how they're acting and things like that. So there's so many benefits to doing breath work. And I think if you don't get, you can try it. Like, I'd say probably the first or second time I tried breath work, I was like, I didn't get anything from that.
Oh, really?
No, because maybe I was still thinking it was like a little bit of bullshit. So even though I would go in being like, okay, let's just see what happens, I probably did, again, subconsciously have the thought, I think this is bullshit. But and maybe I didn't connect with the facilitator. Like, you know, you have to try. If you didn't get anything from it, as in, you'll never get nothing from it. You'll always feel relaxed, and you know, it'll be good to take a time out for the hour or whatever. But sometimes you just need to keep going until you find a facilitator that you connect with. Especially the music is very, very important to bring you on that journey. And so if I'm doing one-to-one breathwork sessions, like I would have asked you, okay, what's your intention? Is there anything you want to focus on? And if you're like, no, I just want to see what it's all about and finally, like, you know, give myself a break, then I'll always kind of ask people what sort of music they're into. I already knew with you, so I can create the playlist because if you're listening to music that you're into, as well as being guided with your breath, and you're starting to get into it and all these physical effects, then it's literally a trip. So it's like, it's not that breathwork can be very, very good for trauma release and working through, you know, trauma that's stuck in your body, in your cells. Again, with regards to energy, it gets stuck in like every cell of your body. So even if you've processed trauma from ages ago, it might be physically stuck in your body and you need to kind of let it go. But you don't, you know, breathwork doesn't have to be always seen as something to release trauma. It can be something just to, like, go, like I said, go on a trip. You can honestly feel high after doing a session. You can start to see colours. Like, I would often get kind of like kaleidoscope greens and blues. Oh, wow. The colours mean things. Same with you with the were we talking about oranges?
Orange and red.
So then I'm like, okay, like I'll match that with what you said about what you're feeling in your sacral chakra, and then you can make more sense of it. So there's so many components to it, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, that you can get a lot from by just doing it, even just once. But definitely the more that you do it, you learn more about yourself, and you can kind of get guidance or connect more with your body and follow what your body is telling you.
Yeah, I think the second one that I did with you, because I had such a like incredibly deep experience the first time. I think the second time I was like, I had such a goal of this is exactly what I want, and then I felt like I couldn't really relax my body because I was just thinking like, when is it gonna come, and when is it gonna come, when is it gonna come? And then it wasn't until I was like, we did the guided meditation, which I really, really appreciate with you, because the last breathwork session I didn't have that. And for me, I felt like that's what really made me I guess dive really deep into my subconscious and understand like what is actually going on, and like what is my body actually, like you said, what does my body actually need right now. So I wanted one thing, but my body was like, no, what you need is to, that session was about connecting with my inner child and making sure that she knew she was safe and she was loved, whilst the first session was about connecting with someone who passed away and letting go of stress. And then I felt the last one that I did was more about letting go of limiting beliefs and attachment. That's something that I've struggled with a lot lately. So it's so cool to see that every session is going to be different, but it's never about, like, I've only done 3 now, so I'm not an expert, but every single one, like, I've had this is what's going to happen now, and it's been completely different.
And that's because you're conscious with your intention, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to come out of the session. So you can go in with this intention, and often I'll go in and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to feel high after this session, or I want to feel super relaxed. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and it's like I'll do a session in the evening and I'll come out of it, it's 9 p.m. and I'm wired. And I'm like, no, this is, I don't want this because I need to go to bed now. But then I'm like wired. And so that's why I'm saying you're with the breathwork sessions, by listening to your body, your breath will and your body will give you exactly what you need in that moment. And you can bring the intention in, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to come out of the session. But it's still a journey, and each breathwork session will be very different. Some will be more impactful than others. Some will be more physical. Some will be more visual. But it's all about incorporating each experience and integrating. You can probably say that each of the sessions that you've done, although they were very different, has helped you understand yourself a little bit more.
Oh God, yeah.
And will be somehow connected in some way, even though they're not similar. They'll still be helping you connect the dots, let's say.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's some things that have showed up in every single one of them. But I'm so curious, like, about, because for me, every time I've done a session, I'm like, oh, I'm so tired now. Like, I just want to fall asleep. I just want to journal. I always just got a nude and I sit there and I want to pass out. I'm like journaling away because you're always fucking starving after as well.
Yeah.
So like, I just can't even imagine like coming out of a session and being like, woo, like, let's go drink or let's go out.
Yeah. I've only had that maybe once, but I think that's because I was working so much. So my intention going into the breathwork, and it was one-on-one, it was actually in this room. My intention was that I want to feel deeply, deeply relaxed afterwards so that I can get a really good night's sleep, because I think this was in April and I had a lot of events on in April and they needed energy. So my intention was to go in, and when I come out of it, okay, she leaves and then I can go to sleep and I'll have a really, really deep rest. But I guess I got what I needed, but it was in a different form. So when we're talking about energy, I needed energy. But I meant tomorrow, tomorrow and like the rest of the month. When in fact, the vibrations going through my body were in, I almost felt like, like my whole body was literally vibrating like off the bed, and it was still running through my body afterwards.
Wow.
So that is what I asked for. And then I could carry that in. Like, it obviously took me a while to go to sleep that night, but I could carry that into my days after that. So, but most of the time, most individuals are in this automatic fight or flight mode, because that's how we live. We don't breathe correctly. So at the start, when I was talking about functional breathing, we don't breathe correctly because we're stressed. And when you're in that fight or flight mode, your breathing is fast, it's shallow, and it's from the chest. So even physically, you're keeping your body's in fight or flight mode, but you're keeping it in fight or flight mode with how you breathe, because it's from up in the upper chest and it's shallow. And then that keeps your mind going if you're an overthinker, because you're giving feedback to your brain from your body. Yeah, this is stress. Yeah, keep in fight or flight mode. So most of the time when other people do breath work, and especially when I'm doing the sessions with the heart rate monitors, is to show people how they can have a really impactful effect on their nervous system to push it into the other mode, which is rest and digest mode. Because most of us are stressed, when you take that break and you focus on your breath and push it down into your belly, because when you're stressed, you don't breathe from your belly, you're breathing from the chest. So when we're bringing a lot of oxygen and a lot of air in through our mouth in the breath work down into your belly, you're focusing on deep belly breaths, like working the diaphragm, nice, slow, deep breaths. And by breathing in that way, you, by yourself, although it's guided and facilitated, you push your body into rest or digest. So you force it into that really relaxed state. And because we're not used to switching off for a long time or regularly enough, that is why you feel super, super relaxed by the end of it. And that is why you will be really hungry after, because you've been in the rest or digest mode. When we are stressed, our nervous system, stress is sympathetic state of our nervous system, and relaxed is parasympathetic state. So when we are going around stressed, our adrenaline is going, we've got a lot more cortisol, again, fast breathing, fast heart rate, racing mind. Blood is diverted to the organs that we need in times of threat, because that's what stress is, or that sympathetic state. In times of threat or stress, or let's say a danger, your blood goes to all the places that you'll need to run really quick, or basically survival mode. One of those places that is not required is your stomach, because nobody needs to eat when they're, in danger.
You're getting chased by a lion.
Yeah. So when you push yourself into that rest and digest mode, which is also healing mode or repair mode, also really, really good for your immune system, by the time you come out of the breathwork, the blood flow is going to those other places that it's not needed when you're in stress. So that's why the blood flow is going to your stomach. You'll be really, really hungry. Also, you don't eat a lot before you do the breathwork session anyway, but because blood flow is going down into your stomach, and also, blood flow in general will be diverted to the places it needs for healing, rest, digest, and immune system. So that's why everyone craves like a really big meal afterwards, and that's why most people will feel very relaxed afterwards. And like I said before, about even with your brain, you're activating those theta and delta waves, which are the deep meditative state, or what you would see in like deep rest when you're in a deep sleep. You've activated those as well. So that's why when you come out of it, you can feel a little bit spaced. But because you've changed the pH of your blood as well, it takes a little bit of time for your body to come back to itself again. You need to make sure that you're drinking a lot of water. But that's why I like to do the breath work at night, because I don't like anyone, sometimes it can be hard to go to work or, drive safely, especially if you're on a bike over here or whatever, because you can just be a little bit spaced after finally giving your nervous system that break. It doesn't want to switch back on again, which is why it's actually just better to have a nice meal, do your journaling, process a little bit, although you probably won't process fully maybe until the next day or two, or at the end of the week, and then you can have a nice restful sleep. So depending on what you need and how stressed you are in your daily life, you will have a different outcome to somebody else based on what you're, most people will need that nervous system complete timeout, which is why you'll feel like really relaxed and sometimes spaced afterwards.
Yeah, but it's honestly the best feeling though. Like, you just feel so good. Yeah. And if you're like someone like myself, I have this core wound of being vulnerable is weak. So that's something I'm really trying to overcome. Yeah. So one of the things that really, really held me back from booking in for a breathwork session is I don't want to cry in front of another person. What if it triggers something in me and I get really upset, and then that person's going to see that. And what if I can't snap out of it? What if I just start having a seizure, or if it gets too much, and if I get those claw hands, I was just stressing myself out. But you said that you can kind of just stop the breathing or just come back, and there was one point when we did with the holding the breath, and I remember I was starting to panic a little bit, and I just took a little breath, and then we just kept going. Yeah. So guys, if you are scared, just know that you are literally in control the whole time. Yeah. It's not something is taking over your body. No. You can always stop. You can always have a rest. Exactly. If you're ever scared, you can just put your hand up and say, "I need help," or if there's something that's going on. It's honestly, I really regret that I haven't done it earlier. Yeah. Because I also thought it was a bit woo woo, Jesus, that's a bit too spiritual for me. Yeah. But now I'm obviously on this huge spiritual journey, so I'm yes, give me all of it.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important, is to know that I think you need to look at it in a way that to kind of change the narrative of it a little bit, especially when you're talking about vulnerability, because I would struggle with that as well. You would go to a personal trainer if you want to learn, better form. It's kind of similar. There might be times when you're doing personal training where you're oh shit, I didn't get that right. It's not that you're crying in front of them, but that's also a form of vulnerability. When you're going to somebody else to learn something that you want to get better at, or that you want to understand more, that's kind of just another way of looking at it. And if you go to any form of a teacher or a coach or a mentor or whatever, you're just going to learn a little bit more. And I find with you, we did one-to-one, and that is often a good place to start if you struggle with vulnerability, because in a group it can be very distracting if other people are crying, and if you're not used to it, and it can be harder for you to get into it. But you're always reminded, or sorry, should I say, you should always be reminded, based on who you're with, that you have got complete control over your breath. And it's really important that you're not trying to compare yourselves to others and how they're breathing, or if you're not experiencing any of the side effects that I spoke about, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. And usually when I am doing the session, I'll kind of help guide with the breath. So I'll do it myself, and I'll make the sounds, and I'll kind of go like this, and I'll kind of help. But that doesn't mean that you need to keep up with my speed of the breath, because if your thought is like, oh my God, why can't I keep up with her? Then your thinking mind is on too much, and then you can't get into it.
Yeah.
So you have to go at your own pace. I'm just the guider and the facilitator. I'm teaching you the breathing patterns and directing you, but you need to listen to your own body. If you're finding you're not getting the pattern, like let's say you're not able to do it deeply because you're going too fast, then you need to slow it down. If you're finding something is a little bit too intense, you just slow down, do a different style of breathing that I teach at the start. And then if you just want to break overall, you just breathe through your nose. So you've got these options to slow down, and it's quite empowering in those moments. At the point where you feel the most vulnerable, you should also be feeling the most empowered, because you're actually like, no, I've got this. And then when you do take those breaks, you're like, okay, I've got control. Now I'm ready to go back into it. And you kind of calm yourself down a bit, and then you go back into it. But working on understanding your body a bit more and seeing and feeling what your breath does to your mind and body afterwards will help you do it more, and then you'll get more confident. And I find, like, as well, if you do end up getting teary, or sometimes it's just tears and it's not actual crying, but if you start to cry, you need to know as well that you don't try to keep breathing when you're doing the crying, because that's too much. There's too many things at once. You just do your cry, and then when it's over, you've calmed yourself down a bit, or it's all released, you can go back to the breath. But I think you kind of have to step in. Breathwork is a very vulnerable thing, but you should feel comfortable enough with who you're doing it with that you're not embarrassed about it, and that it's like, it's all just, I'm there to help you heal yourself. It's not me healing you. I'm helping you understand your own body a bit more, and your own mind a bit more, which is actually you really just healing yourself. I'm just helping you. I'm guiding you through the session and learn about what you might have experienced. So you have to be open to that vulnerability, because if there's shit stuck in your nervous system, in your mind, personally, I would feel worse living in fear all of the time and being, pushing stuff down, rather than being open to vulnerability and maybe seeing what comes up temporarily, so that you can get over whatever it is that might be bothering you. So I don't like being vulnerable either, but then you can kind of see and feel the sense of reward afterwards when you do
100%.
it. And once you do it once, then you don't give a shit the next time.
You're
oh yeah, she's seen me crying before.
I was just like, please stop crying soon.
Yeah.
Just want to release all of this
and
bottled
also,
up stuff.
Like, even if you don't want to be vulnerable, sometimes you won't be able to help it. If you block it, you're literally wasting the session. So if you feel tears coming up and then you completely stop and push it back down, you're going to be back to square one. So it's good to just let it out, and you need to feel like you're in a safe environment, which is why sometimes one-to-one is better than people in a group, because there can be a big release from other people and it might distract you a little bit. But you have to go to those, like that cliche saying that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because otherwise there's no growth in it. And like, crying is nothing to be like embarrassed about or ashamed of, and it's a good release. It's another form of energy, negative energy, getting out of your body, because sometimes you can cry and you don't even know what it's about, and it's just your body clearly has something stuck under the surface that it doesn't want anymore, and then you just let it go.
Yeah, 100%. And I really like what you said about the gym as well. And I think a lot of the girls will be able to relate to that because most people listen to this podcast, they go to the gym, they have probably worked with some kind of personal trainer or coach at some point in their life, and for some reason it's like, oh, I'm happy to go to a gym and like I can learn how to squat, even though I've never done it before. But when it comes to that vulnerability, so many of us hold on to these stories that for being vulnerable is bad and you shouldn't cry in front of other people and just suck it up. And it, it stems back from like childhood and conditioning and like what our parents experienced when they were kids. And so like if that's who you are and you're feeling like that, like please don't be ashamed. Like this is so normal. But I really like, if you are coming in July or if you're doing a breathwork session anytime soon, like please go into it with an open mind, open heart, just ready to experience whatever is going to come up for you. Because like when you're overthinking it, I'm the queen of overthinking. Like you're not going to experience anything until you just allow that to just pass. Like every time where I literally surrendered, I was like, fuck it, nothing's going to happen this time. Then bam, it's like crazy stuff just comes up.
Exactly.
It is mental.
Yeah. And I think like people that struggle with overthinking, like breathwork is brilliant because you are like physiologically changing the blood flow to that region of your brain. So it's not about, you don't have to think about turning it off. It'll happen if you keep doing that breathing pattern. So, and I think that we don't, especially when you're talking about all these women that go to the gym, like you focus so much on going to the gym 5 days a week, putting so much effort into your body in the gym. So why can you not give yourself this one opportunity or 1 hour to focus on your body in a different way, but letting it like rest? And that's another thing with training. You are oftentimes in fight or flight mode all the time. High intensity workouts, CrossFit, the heart rate training that I do, all high intensity. Then we don't allow ourselves that break. So that's why when you do take that time out, like, any sort of these like sound healing or the breath work or anything like that, your body is like, whoa, what's this? And that's why you can feel like you are so spaced because your body isn't used to being in a relaxed state enough. So it's so helpful for people that are massive overthinkers or that focus on their bodies a lot or use exercise as a coping strategy.
Oh god, I hate it. The gym is my therapy. I used to say that. I was definitely guilty of that, but now I see it all plastered all over Instagram and I'm like,
you have to be able to complement whatever you're doing and balance both states of your nervous system. So I would be highly active. I train a lot. And I found then that it was really hard for me to find something I liked doing that would help relax me. And so that's why sometimes we combine the breathwork with the ice, because I'm showing people 2 different states where we're using the breath to get really, 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 really relaxed in that style of breathwork session. And then once they're out of it and they're awake again, we have a little break. And then I do the opposite and I basically get them to put themselves into a stressful situation, which is the cold water and the ice. And again, the only way you'll be able to stay in the ice is if you focus on your breath. You won't be able to otherwise, because there is chemoreceptors in your body that are stimulated with the cold water, and they will automatically make you go as soon as you step into the ice. And if you're not able to overcome your breath and push yourself out of fight or flight mode, you won't be able to stay in the cold water, which means you won't be able to receive the benefits of the cold water. So when we combine the breath work and the ice together, it's showing people, first of all, you're using your breath to push yourself into rest or digest mode. Now I'm actually going to put you in a stressful situation so you can practice again what you've just learned and overcome the stress response with your own breath, so that you can stay in the cold water for 2 to 3 minutes. And everybody that goes, before they go into the ice bath, everybody, especially if they have never done ice bath before, will say, I'm not going to be able to do that. And I will say, you will be able to do it. And you will be able to do it for over 60 seconds, which is kind of the minimum you need to get the benefits of the cold water and to overcome that stress response. So it's about as well, the ice bath, if you're a big overthinker, is a huge one, because as soon as you go in,
so good.
there's no thinking.
Yeah.
So people that struggle with meditation, or struggle especially at, in a breathwork session, maybe for the first 15 minutes, where they're still like thinking, am I doing this right, or oh, why can I hear somebody else, or I don't know if I'm, they're starting to overthink. Getting into the ice is an immediate puts an immediate stop to your mind, because in that moment all you have to do is focus on your breath, and you're coming out of your mind and into your body, which stops the thinking. And also, because it's so cold, it just stops, because you're like, okay, focus on my breath. So you can see how the application of the breath in different scenarios can be so helpful for different reasons, and for different, I guess, struggles that people have. Because I don't struggle with overthinking, but I struggle to relax. You might struggle with overthinking and struggling to relax. So
all the problems.
But there's different, the breath can be applied in kind of any scenario, and anyone that's contraindicated to that style of breath work will always be able to use a different form of breathing for another benefit. Especially if they've got asthma or something like that, you can do exercises for your lungs and for your diaphragm that isn't transformational breath work, but that will help you for, expanding your lung capacity, improving gas exchange. So there's literally anything that you struggle with, or any sort of problem, whether it's health or your mind, you can use some form of breathing to help you with it and improve it in some way.
It's actually so crazy that you're literally learning how to breathe again. Like the most natural thing, but most people don't do it. They just breathe up here in the chest, like you said, and it's like, even just like if you're sitting at I don't know if you're in a gym or if you're at work waiting for the bus or whatever, and you just notice how you're breathing and how you're sitting, like it literally shifts so much of your
100%. And especially with the high intensity workouts as well. If you're used to doing them, let's say a couple of times a week, you get used to breathing through your mouth. So anyone that does high intensity workouts or CrossFit or wherever your heart rate will be up, in your next session, I think try and notice how you're breathing, because it's more than likely in and out through the mouth.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is fine at some parts of your workout when it's super high intensity and your heart rate is going, because you need to get more oxygen in. But because you get used to breathing through the mouth in workouts, you can then, most of the time, you bring that type of breathing to the outside, and then you're breathing through your mouth on the outside, and your mouth breathing is connected to, as in if you're just walking around, not actual breathwork session, your mouth is more connected to your upper chest, again, which keeps that fight or flight mode going. So even if you're just sitting down on your laptop, because breathing is an involuntary process, but we do have control over how we use it. And most of the time, because we've been so automatic with our breathing, we have been in fight or flight mode, we are breathing from the chest, mostly from the mouth as well. You can just, all you have to do is notice how you're breathing, and you're like, fuck, she's just said that. Yeah, I'm breathing through my mouth. But once you're conscious of it, you can change it and you can start breathing through the nose again. I'm talking about most of the time walking around, sitting down on the laptop, not in extreme high intensity workouts where you do need a little bit of mouth breathing, but your nose is connected more down to your diaphragm, which is helping you activate that parasympathetic mode. Even you don't have to be doing huge belly breaths to just use your diaphragm a little bit more, which is more functional breathing, so that we've got better concentration, better memory, better sleep. Anyone that has issues with sleep, more than likely is in a fight or flight mode going to bed, and or is not breathing through the nose.
Oh my God, I just think all that stuff is so interesting, and it's absolutely crazy. Like, how, I don't know how many times I've said to clients, like, before you go into a binge, for example, can you notice, like, where are you breathing? Are you breathing up here? Like, what's your body doing? And we're just so unaware, and it's absolutely crazy because we're just focusing so much on the external world.
Yeah, exactly.
We have going for almost an hour now. I knew this was going to happen.
Same.
But can we touch a little bit about the ice bath? Because that's something that is extremely trendy right now. Everyone's doing ice bath. No one has any idea of how long should you go for, who should do it, how should you be breathing? Should you be breathing through your mouth? Should you be breathing through your nose? Like, what's the benefits? Like, it just runs through it.
Again, so many benefits. To deliberate cold exposure. So it doesn't, especially with people, let's say my following or my audience who are in Ireland, we don't have a lot of ice baths. So I think it's really important that we talk about ice baths as well as being a form of deliberate cold exposure, because I go to a very cold ice bath over here in Body Factory. I know that you've tried it as well. It's cold. Sometimes
it is very cold.
Sometimes it's 0 degrees, sometimes it's 2. But at the very start, I wasn't able to do that type of ice bath. So when you are choosing to do deliberate cold exposure, I'll go through the benefits in a second. You can literally do that with cold showers starting off. So when you're thinking about temperature, a lot of people say, what temperature should it be? Like, someone starting off would not be able to go into the ice bath that I do now, because it would be too much for them and you've not built up that cold tolerance. So you can start off with cold showers. The temperature is enough that you are like, this is uncomfortable and challenging, but safe to stay in. And that is, for some people, a cold shower. So it can be a cold shower, it can be a cold plunge, which is probably up to like 12 degrees, maybe 12 to 15 degrees. And then obviously when you start adding actual ice, or if it's let's say under, I would say 5 degrees, then that's your ice bath. But they're all forms of deliberate cold exposure, where the intention is, I'm going into the cold for these benefits. Oh, there's so many. So you have reduced inflammation in your body. So this is why it's really good for immune system, because a lot of sickness or viruses and stuff thrive on inflamed cells. So when you go into cold water, it reduces inflammation. This is also really good for your DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, where you've been inflamed after training, and it will help reduce inflammation in your body, help recovery so that you won't be as sore. Energy wise, it helps generate more mitochondria, which are those energy making cells in your body. So if you go into an ice bath, most of the time you should feel fairly high coming out afterwards, because it's a boost in energy.
Oh God, yeah.
So physically, they're kind of a lot of the physical effects. And then mentally, one of the huge ones is working on mental resilience and mental toughness. Okay, this is fucking hard. But let me try 10 seconds longer this time. And you just start with 15 or 30 seconds and get good at doing 15 or 30 seconds and focus on your breathing. I'll go through the breathing in a second. And it is boosting self-esteem. It's boosting self-confidence. It's boosting your willingness to take on challenges on the outside, because you're like, fuck, I'm able to do ice baths, so yeah, I will go for that job interview. You know, it's about, most of what we're doing is about bringing what you've learned to the outside, to real life situations. So and then you've got all your like happy chemicals that are going to your brain, so dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins. You've got a little bit of cortisol release, which in small doses is very beneficial. So when we're in high states of stress, or let's say chronic stress for a long time, like months on end, you've got cortisol that's there all the time, which isn't good for us. But small acute doses of stress hormones, or like cortisol, is actually good for us. So, you know, 2 minutes in the ice bath is more than enough, and you can build yourself up to that. Or 2 minutes in the shower. You can start doing the shower warm, finish it in cold, 10 seconds, stay in it for 10 seconds on the cold, build yourself up. Then you can build yourself up to starting with cold. Then you can build yourself up to only cold showers. And it doesn't have to be every time. You know, you don't want to, you know, perfectionist tendencies can come in there. You don't have to do it every day. If you feel like you just don't want to do it today, you just have a warm shower. Have a cold one the next time, or do warm with a little bit of cold. So many benefits to doing deliberate cold exposure. And a huge one that I would focus on as well with what I do, because we use the heart rate monitors in the ice bath, is its impact on your nervous system. Again, regulating your nervous system, reducing your overall resting heart rate, and improving your heart rate variability. So your heart rate variability is basically the variance in time between the beats, the actual heartbeats. So your resting heart rate is the number of beats per minute, let's say, at rest. Your heart rate variability is a huge indicator of stress. So the cold water, because we are stimulating the vagus nerve, which again pushes us into rest or digest mode. The vagus nerve loves deep breathing, and the vagus nerve loves cold water. So every time you go into the cold water, you're activating that vagus nerve and regulating your nervous system a little bit more. You're pushing down your resting heart rate over time. The lower our heart rate can be, as in a good way, not for poor health, let's say, you're going to be able to improve your longevity. And you are showing literally that you are less stressed because your heart rate variability is improved and your overall heart rate is reduced. So that's another huge benefit of the cold water. Breathing wise, I think the best tip is to focus on a long exhale, preferably breathing through your nose, but it doesn't really matter since it's only for like could only be for 30 seconds, 60 seconds. When we breathe in, we keep fight or flight mode going. So when, let's say we're going into a bit of panic or we're anxious and we're like, that keeps it going when your inhalation keeps fight or flight mode going. The exhalation is what puts us into rest or digest mode. So as you get into the ice bath, because of the initial stressor of the cold, because of the chemoreceptors in your body, like it will automatically make you do a inspiration. You can't control it, and it'll still happen to me. You'll go automatically, which is normal, and your breathing might be a little bit fast as you get in. You should get in slowly. You shouldn't be just diving in, because it'll be too much stress and you can actually get shock from it as well. You get in and you're like, okay, now even if it's only 2 or 3 seconds, try and control your exhale. Try and take a breathe in through the nose again, try and lengthen the exhale. So that's probably the best tip when you're getting in, is to try and lengthen your exhale, because that's telling your body, sending feedback, no, I'm not stressed, this is rest or digest mode I don't want the stress, high stress mode. And that's what you need to focus on as you're getting into the cold water, because once you've got control over the breath, you get used to the cold, and the cold isn't so cold anymore. It's more tolerable, and it actually is, believe it or not, enjoyable. So I think that the main thing there is to know that when you're breathing on your inhale, that keeps fight or flight mode going. So if you're doing that's going to make things way worse. And you will keep your heart rate going, and you will keep fight or flight mode going, and you won't be able to stay in. Whereas if you're trying to get in, even if you do go through the mouth, at least try and push the breath out through the mouth longer. And even if the next breath is in through the nose, just try and lengthen it. And it'll be quicker at the start, but as you start to slow down your breathing and your heart rate, you'll be able to make the breaths longer. And focusing on the breath will be what passes the time. And then you'll be able to get hopefully down. You're supposed to get, the goal is to get up to the neck. But you don't have to get that first time. Again, you can just practice going up to your thighs the first time, hips the next time, 10 seconds longer the next time. And then just slowly, it's like anything, like with fitness, you couldn't possibly be a beginner going to do a CrossFit workout. You wouldn't be able for it. You've got to build yourself up. So I think, again, it's all about coming back to listening to your body and listening to yourself, and stop comparing yourself to others. You're doing this for you, and every day that you do it, you're getting a little bit better. Even if one day you did less time, or you weren't able for it as much as you were able for it the previous time, you're still giving your body and brain and mind so many benefits. Even if you did, it's not about getting it right every time. It's about keeping the habit up and challenging yourself, and not putting yourself down if you're not able to do it like everybody else. You've got to find your own way of doing it, and if 1 minute or 30 seconds or 45 seconds is what you're able for starting off, then you just stick with that and get good at it, and you will build up the tolerance. Your body gets used to the cold, and your body builds up, like anything, like fitness, you will get better at it, and you'll be able to go a little bit colder. So if you start in the showers, you will be able to go to a cold plunge. And then over time, the cold plunge won't be cold enough. And then you'll go to the ice bath. And then you go to the colder ice bath. And then, I don't know, after that, you'll probably go to, I don't know after that. I'm not there yet either.
Come to Sweden and jump in the ocean there in winter.
Yeah. So, what else did you want to know about the ice baths? That's the benefits, the breathing, and maybe how to build it up a little bit, and knowing that it doesn't have to be an ice bath, just deliberate cold exposure. Was that all on?
Yeah, I think that was everything. And I think that's a really good note to end on as well, that just start where you're at, don't focus on anyone else, and also being okay with some days you might do 30 seconds, some days you might do 2 minutes, and that's completely fine. Like, you don't have to be perfect every single day, because perfection does not exist. And it's also about listening to your body. Like, every day is going to be so fucking different.
And I think as well, when you're saying there about, perfection, and us putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, and I think the last thing I will say here is that when you start to do that, you are automatically putting yourself back into a stressed state. So you're undoing everything that you've been working so hard on, whether it's breathing or whether it's cold exposure or sauna or whatever yoga you've been practicing. As soon as you start saying that, as soon as you start putting that pressure on yourself, if you didn't get something right one day, you're putting yourself back into that stressed mode. So it's about acknowledging that some days our body is too sore, some days we're too tired, some days we've loads of energy, and listening, because the more you listen to your body, that's when you'll find the perfect program for you, or the perfect method for you, and what is going to work best for you, because no two people will ever be the same. So you can still use these practices and just find out your own, your own sweet spot and what works really well for you.
Yeah. Oh God, I love that so much. And guys, we're gonna put in the show notes. You can bring your notebook when you're going to listen to this. This is not one of those episodes where you're just like, walking on the beach. Oh, this is so crazy. I would want to take notes from this episode.
Good. Hopefully people do.
Yes, I hope so. Before we go, do you want to give yourself a plug? Are you taking clients? How can people get in contact with you?
I guess I do a lot of stuff out here in person in Bali. So we'll do breathwork, we'll do heart rate training. So I use the heart rate monitors in everything that I do, whether it's the breathwork, whether it's the ice bath, whether it's the heart rate monitoring, because I like to show people with my skeptical brain, this is what you're doing with your breath. This is what, this is how the breath can help you in performance. This is how you can get better at your training. So if you want to look up what I'm doing out here in person, that's called bpm.method on Instagram. And then for all those people that will not be able to get to Bali or aren't in Bali, I do online coaching, and this is all the stuff that I talk about on my page anyway, whether it's my personal page or my my work page. So if you want to follow my personal page, it's probably the best way of finding out everything that I offer, which is just Becca Gillen, or you can email me, becca@beccagillen.com. And hopefully this has helped people understand a little bit more about what breathwork is, why you would use it, and hopefully people are not afraid of it anymore. And more, actually they should be, hopefully at this point they're just curious and they're like, right, where can I do this? So hopefully we've inspired people to just go for it and try it out.
Yes, I hope so as well. And honestly, if you guys are coming to Bali, I would 100% recommend getting in contact with you and doing a one-on-one session if you're available, because she's a very, very busy woman. And if you are going on the retreat and you have because I know some of the girls are like, oh, I don't know, I'm a bit scared. Please give it a chance. It's honestly one of the best things I've ever done. And I cannot recommend it enough. There's a reason why I was like, Lauren, you need to get this girl on. She needs to be on it. So guys, if you like this episode, which I'm sure you will, you know the drill by now. Please take a screenshot, tag myself, tag Becca, tag Women's Fitness Academy, and please let us know what you thought about it. If it inspired you to try breathwork, let us know. I would like to know your thoughts. But thank you so much for listening, guys, and I'll talk to you probably next week. Bye.